Hello class, in this video we'll go over how to find the mean and range and then look through some functional questions about it. Okay, so let's talk about the mean first. So the mean is an average. So they sometimes call it the mean average, or they might just say find the mean. Those are both possible. And what you do to find the mean average is you add all of your results up and then you divide by how many results there were. So let's say that this is how many hours people watch television for over the weekend. What you're going to do is add all of those hours up, okay, and that gets to 30. So I've added all of those numbers and that gets to 30, and then you divide it by how many results there were, and you can see there are 6 results here. So I'm going to divide by 6, and that's going to make 5. So 5 is my mean, and you can check if it's reasonable, because it should be between the numbers that are here. So you can see the biggest number is 9, the smallest number is 1, 5 is between those numbers, so that must be fairly reasonable. So how do you find the range? You do the biggest, take away the smallest number, and what this shows you is the spread of data. So it shows you out of all your results, what's the smallest compared to the largest. Okay, and what's the difference between them? So the biggest number is 9, and you can see the smallest number is 1. So here they are, here's the biggest one, here's the smallest one. And I take them where I get 8, so the range is 8. And that's how you find the mean and range. Okay, let's go on to some example questions here. Alright, so it says, what is the average amount of ice cream sold on a weekday? And you can see there's a table here, it says ice cream sold, and it has the days of the week. So one of the most important things about questions that have mean and averages in them is you need to check what they actually want you to find out, and don't do everything automatically, because it just says weekday, so you only need to add these ones up here. Okay, and when I add all these up, I get to 792. And then you're going to divide by the amount of results that you counted up. So don't divide by 7. Divide by the amount of weekdays, and there's 5 of those, so you're going to divide by 5, and your mean, the number that you'll get, will be this. And the thing about ice cream is that you can't get a decimal of an ice cream, so what you need to do is actually round this to a whole amount, and the whole amount will be 158 ice creams. This question says, how does this compare to weekend sales? So if you have a look at the number 158, you can see already that's much less than what happens on the weekend, where you have a 358 and 415. So you could definitely write something like, there are more sales on the weekend than on the weekday. But one of the things that I noticed is that if you actually double 158, it's still less than Saturday and Sunday. So on this one, what you could write is you can write something like, the sales on the weekend I'll probably put Dales here, daily here, so the daily sales on the weekend are more than double the daily sales on the weekdays. And that would be a good comparison. Okay, let's have a look at this one. So this says, what is the problem with using the mean value here? Let's have a look here. So it says house name. So these are some names of some houses, and here's the valuations. So when you look at these and it asks if there's any kind of problem with using it, you need to be checking if any of these look very, very different. And hopefully you can see straight away that this one looks extremely different. And what this is going to do is it's going to change the average a lot. So if I said, like, what do you think is a normal price for a house on this street, I think you'd go somewhere around the 120,000 mark. But you can see this one's very unusual. So let's try and do a couple of means here. So first let's do a mean where we put all of the houses together. And if you add up all of these prices, you get to this number here. And then when you divide that by 5, because that's how many houses there are, you get this amount. And if you look at this number, can you see this is much higher than all of the houses except the 525,000 house? So it's not really representing the reality of the houses that are there. Another thing that you can try and do is you can try and ignore this one. So this one's sometimes called an outlier, where it's very different to the other ones. Okay, an outlier. So you can ignore the outlier. So I'm going to put no outlier. And just add the other ones together. So here I'm adding everything together except this one. Okay, and this time the amount that I get when I add all of them together is this. And since I'm only using 4 prices, I'm going to divide by 4. And can you see this time? The price is much more similar to the other 4 houses. Okay, let's have a look at this one. So pub quiz scores. Here are 3 friends' scores after a month of weekly pub quizzes. Using mean and range, decide who is the weakest contestant. Okay, so in a question like this, of course, you get some points for just finding the means and the ranges. Okay, and as usual, you just add up all the numbers. So for Phil, this is 359, and then you just divide by 5 because there's 5 results there. So his average is 71.8. Okay, and then let's do Wendy. I'll just put a W, and I'll put Wendy, that's fine. And then Wendy, so for Wendy, she got 403. When you add all her scores together, again, she's got 5 scores, so you divide by 5 for the mean, and her mean is 80.6. And then let's have a look at Robert. So Robert, if you add all his together, he got 368, and again you're going to divide that by 5, and that equals 73.6. Okay, so at the moment Phil is looking like probably the weakest player because his mean, I'll just put mean here so we remember which one it is. There we go. His mean is the lowest, but we'll just have a look at the range now. So the range, remember we're going to do the biggest, take away the smallest. Okay, so for Phil this is 77 is his biggest, take away 69, which is 8. So same with Wendy, we'll do the largest, take away the smallest, which is 5. So for Robert's 99, take away 56, which is 43. So what's going on with this range then? Because if we have a look at, so I think it's clear to say that Wendy's probably one of the strongest players here because her mean is just much higher than the other 2. But with the range, Robert's range is the highest. So the question is this a good thing or a bad thing? But if you have a look at Robert's score, he got 99, which is brilliant, but he also got the worst score, 56, and that's much worse than the worst ones here. So Phil got 69, and Wendy's worst one is actually 79, so her worst one is much better than the other 2 players. Because Robert's range is so big, it means that he's not very reliable. Sometimes he can get a good score, but sometimes his score's terrible. And for this reason, I'd probably choose Robert as the weakest. Although if you like, you could choose Phil, because Phil's mean is the lowest. But for me, because Robert is so unreliable, I would choose him as the weakest. So you can write something you can write something like this. So I think Robert is the weakest because his large range shows he is unreliable and he scored the lowest out of everyone on one of his quizzes. Okay, so let's have a look at this one. So instead of a table here, you've got bar charts. So the first thing to do here, there's a lot of numbers on here already. It's very important that you don't just add together the numbers that you can see. So it says, what is the mean average of Christmas spending between 2012 and 2015? So you can see at the top it says value of online Christmas shopping, online spending in November and December. So the first thing you're going to have to do if they give you a bar chart is figure out what actual numbers these are here. Okay, and if we zoom in a little bit to the scale here, you can see that the scale goes up in 5s, which is a little bit tricky. And what you need to think about is the fact that there's going to be 5 extra numbers here. So it's going to be like 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and same here. Yeah, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and then up to 25. And hopefully that will help you a bit with figuring out where these amounts are. So this first one here, I'd probably say, so if that's 15, 16, 17, it's somewhere between 17 and 18. I'm going to say 17. If your bar chart is this unclear, it's likely that they'll let you go between 17 and 18 and you'll still get a point here. This one certainly looks like it's one above 20, so I'm going to put 21 billion. And all of these prices are in billions, by the way, that's why I'm thinking in billions. So this one here, I'd say like it's a little bit further away, so I'm going to put 23 billion. And this one looks like it's more than one above, so I'm going to say 27 billion. So the first thing you'll have to do with these kind of questions is actually decide for yourself what amount these bar charts are. And then it says, what's the mean average of Christmas spending between 2012 and 2015? So you're just going to now add up all of the figures you've just found. When you add all these up, you get to 88. $88 billion, and then you can just divide by how many you have. So 88 divided by 4, which is 22 billion. And that's how you find the average of that. Okay, so these tables are going to get slowly a bit more confusing. So this says number of guests booked in. It says room, and then it has days of the week across here, and then it's got a lot of numbers here. It says find the mean number of guests that book a room each day. Okay, so firstly, make sure that you don't just do all of the numbers. So you do need to make sense of what's happening on this table. Okay, and if you see it says room here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if there was an S here, that might mean the amount of rooms, but because it just says room, this is actually the room number. So this is like, you know when you have a hotel, there's a number on the door. So that just means that these are the names of the different rooms. Okay, so even though this is room 6, you can probably only fit 1 or 2 people in this room. Okay. So if we have a look at Monday, 2 people stayed in room 1, nobody stayed in room 2, 2 people stayed in room 3, 2 people stayed in room 4, 1 person stayed in room 5, and that's how you need to look at this question. Alright, so if we find the mean number of guests that book a room each day, what we need to do first is figure out how many people stayed each day. Right, so if we add these up, this one turns out to be 7 people. Tuesday is 6 people, Wednesday is 8 people, Thursday is 5 people, Friday is 10, Saturday is 8, and Sunday is 6. And it just says find the mean number of guests that book a room each day. So now we find this is how many guests have booked a room in each of those days. So we're just going to add this up as usual, and then just divide by how many there are. So I'm going to add them all up, divide by 7, and in this case the answer is this. And you see here again it says find the amount of guests. Guests don't come in parts, so we need to round this to a whole number. So in this case the mean is going to equal 7. And if you want to find the range, because we haven't done range for a while, so just remember it's the biggest take away the smallest. So the largest amount of guess they had was 10, and the smallest amount of guess they had was 5. So the range in that case is 5. And the mean is 7. Okay, last one. So have a look at this table. It says race length in kilometres, people competing, March, August, December. And the question says find the mean average amount of participants for all the races combined. So again, this is one of these misleading tables where there's a lot of numbers and you think, oh, I'll just add all the numbers up. But you need to be very careful because these numbers here just tell you how long the race is. Okay, so these are actually kilometres. You can see here it says km. So these are kilometres, these aren't people. This is just how long the races are. So that means you did a 6,900 kilometre race, and there was one that happened in March, one that happened in August, and one that happened in December. So altogether, can you see there were 9 races? 3 that were this long, 3 that were this long, and 3 that were this long. So if we want to find the amount of participants, we just need to add these 9 numbers together. Not all of the numbers. And if you add all of those together, you get this number. And then you can see there's 9 races altogether, so you divide by 9. And that equals 11,600. So then this is your average. And again, if you wanted to find the range just for fun, but it doesn't ask you in this question, you would do the biggest take away the smallest, and the biggest number is 1900, and the smallest number is 5000. So your range here would be 14,000.